Remember this chart from Johns Hopkins University? The world watched as U.S. COVID-19 deaths climbed past 1 million, but China's number stayed below 5,000. Well, 3 years later, China is now changing its tune, saying tens of thousands have officially died from the virus. But is that the real number? A new study from Peking University estimates over 900 million are infected with the virus in China. The study goes on to note that of that number, 80% are facing severe symptoms. Now, that study has already been deleted from all platforms in China. Is China about to see a massive death wave? Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. For the first time, China has provided an official fatality measure of the unprecedented COVID-19 wave now sweeping the country. The new disclosure shows a massive spike in China's previous official death toll. But experts warn the number is still just the tip of the iceberg. Let's take a closer look.
Over the weekend, China said almost 60,000 people died of COVID-19 since early December. This number was based only on hospital deaths and counted patients who succumbed to respiratory failure or other underlying diseases. Just a day earlier, China had reported only less than 40 virus deaths while battling the world's largest outbreak. But experts say the new figure is still likely to be an underestimate. According to a report from Peking University, 64% of China's population was infected by mid-January. That's about 900 million people. Some experts believe China's current average fatality rate to be about 0.4% among unvaccinated. Given China's low vaccination rate among its 1.4 billion people, that means China's official death count is only a fraction of the estimated minimum mortality total. A Chinese resident says he doubts the official death toll.
There are so many crematoriums across the country. Would they be overwhelmed if 50 or 60,000 people died? I still can't be convinced by this number.
In addition, the new official toll of 60,000 also translates to about 1 daily death for every million people in China. That's as Hong Kong reported over 67 daily deaths per million. There's no scientific explanation for this difference. Experts say the mainland's figures are inconsistent with those in other countries or regions.
The whole country has fallen into a Tacitus trap, a situation where people no longer believe anything the authorities say. Whether with the previous number or this number, people find neither believable.
That's amid reports of overwhelmed crematoriums around China, suggesting excess mortality levels. Well, modeling efforts by global researchers forecast up to 2 million deaths in China by the end of this year.
An update on China's COVID-19 outbreak and how it's hitting the country's military. Related information is under strict control in China, meaning news about what's happening is limited and difficult to access. But the official newspaper of the PLA, or People's Liberation Army, shed some light on the situation in an article published Monday. The story calls it necessary to, quote, systematically solve the problems of epidemic prevention, quarantine, and treatments. Further adding that the Army should minimize the impact of the pandemic on its ranks. Just how big is that impact? The article doesn't say. But last month, Radio Free Asia quoted an insider as saying Army members in Baoding City got infected and that the situation was spiraling out of control. The city of Baoding holds military importance for China. And at the same time, the city seemed to be fighting a major outbreak. Residents there have started posting photos or messages about the situation, saying their friends and families have been sickened. The U.S. will penalize Chinese inbound travelers should they provide fraudulent COVID-19 test results. That's according to a senior advisor for the White House COVID response team. During an interview with VOA, Dr. Nahid Badalia clarified the consequences. She said activities like providing inaccurate or misleading information to the government can be subject to criminal offense charges. Her warning is based on the travel restriction order the CDC placed on Chinese tourists earlier this month. According to a screenshot from Chinese social media that was later posted on Twitter, a Chinese passenger managed to arrive in Russia despite testing positive for the virus. The person revealed that he, quote, filled in the real information. Then airport staff asked him to change it and select no to all questions. A lawmaker from Texas is pushing for a new bill. If passed, countries, including China, would be banned from buying real estate in Texas. This as China becomes the biggest foreign buyer of U.S. real estate, spending a record $6 billion in 2021. The top destinations for Chinese buyers are California and Florida. Chinese buyers have also been scooping up land near U.S. military bases. For example, a Chinese corn milling company bought land 20 minutes away from the Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota. A former Chinese general also bought land near Texas's Laughlin Air Force Base, the largest pilot training base in the U.S. Air Force. Back to the Texas bill. It's sponsored by Texas State Senator Lois Kolkhorst. The bill would ban citizens, governments, and entities from China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia from buying land in Texas. Texas Governor Greg Abbott confirmed on Twitter he would sign the bill if it's passed. The Lone Star State has been tightening control of foreign access to its property and infrastructure. In 2021, Texas passed a law that bans companies from making critical infrastructure-related bills in the state if they're owned or controlled by China, Russia, North Korea, or Iran. Two of China's state-run airlines are pulling out of the U.S. stock market. China Southern Airlines and China Eastern Airlines announced Friday they would voluntarily delist from the New York Stock Exchange. Based on a Washington Review commission, the airlines were the only two state-owned enterprises listed on the NYSE. That's as of late September. As for why they're delisting, the airlines listed factors like limited trading volume compared to their Hong Kong-listed shares and high upkeep costs for their U.S. listings. The companies have now joined a bigger wave as China-based entities pull out of the U.S. stock market. Analysts have hinted Beijing is behind it, under threat of a U.S. law. It says foreign companies that refuse to open their books to American regulators for 3 years in a row will be forcibly delisted, something Beijing has refused for years, citing its national security. The news comes after another Chinese tech giant quit the American stock market last year. On Monday, that company got the green light to resume its new user registrations in China. Chinese regulators have ended their year-and-a-half-long crackdown on rideshare app Didi. But the story behind it is much more than meets the eyes, and it has much to do with its U.S. listing. Here's the latest.
Didi Global can finally resume new user registrations in China. The ride-hailing giant confirmed the move Monday. It was a sign that Beijing's 1.5-year-long regulatory crackdown on the firm had come to an end. Didi said in a statement it had carefully cooperated with China's review and dealt with security problems. The company also said it would take measures to ensure platform safety and data security. Monday's news comes as Chinese policymakers look to restore private sector confidence. They are counting on the tech industry to help drive economic activity hit hard by the health crisis. Sources had told Reuters Didi first found trouble with watchdogs when it went ahead with its US stock listing against the regulator's will in 2021. It was ordered to take down its 25 mobile apps from app stores. New user registration was suspended and the company was fined $1.2 billion over data security breaches. Didi was also forced to end its 11-month-long journey as a New York Stock Exchange-traded company in June last year.
China's foreign minister is wrapping up his 5-country Africa tour. Cairo marked his last stop on Sunday, where he said Egypt and China held strong strategic mutual trust.
We will communicate and coordinate with the Egyptian side on bilateral relations and international and regional issues of common concern and promote the new and greater development of China-Egypt relations.
For more than 3 decades, China's foreign ministers have started their terms by visiting Africa. China has been Africa's largest trading partner for 13 years. Mutual trade is expected to top $260 billion in 2022. Beijing has also heavily invested in and loaned out funds for infrastructure in African countries through its Belt and Road Initiative. Experts say Beijing wants a foothold in Africa through seizing control of infrastructure when nations are unable to pay back their Chinese loans, allowing its military greater global access. On the western side, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is gearing up for a visit to Senegal, Zambia, and South Africa. The U.S. is now working to strengthen ties on the continent and offer nations there an alternative to dealing with Beijing. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is set to meet with Chinese Vice Premier Liu He in Switzerland on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. Let's zoom in on what officials say they'll talk about.
According to a Treasury official, they'll also cover global challenges like the possibility of a world recession, the corresponding risks, and how to boost cooperation. The in-person talks come as U.S.-Beijing relations remain tense, despite their trade ties. Washington has blocked the sale of advanced computer chips to China and is considering a ban on investment in some Chinese tech companies. What's more, Beijing's threats to invade Taiwan have proven another point of conflict. The U.S. has said it would defend the island in that situation. Yellen has also criticized China's financing practices on the African continent, calling them economic practices that have disadvantaged all of us. Likewise, she's called on Beijing to end its relationship with Russia as its invasion of Ukraine continues. The Yellen-Liu meeting is part of a joint pledge to work on easing that strain following President Biden's November talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. They spoke alongside the G20 summit in Indonesia. Yellen does not plan to attend the World Economic Forum. Other senior U.S. officials will represent Washington instead, including Trade Representative Catherine Tai and Climate Envoy John Kerry.
China's chief wolf warrior Diplomat sidelined. He was the country's foreign minister's spokesman and a vocal defender of Beijing's zero COVID-19 policy. But now he's getting demoted. According to China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Zhao Lijian is now the deputy of the Department of Border and Maritime Affairs. It's a position on the same level as spokesman in China's communist system, but carries far less importance. For 3 years, Zhao served as a high-profile envoy of the regime's so-called wolf warrior policy. The term is used to describe Beijing's confrontational, combative brand of diplomacy. Here's how Beijing wields the technique. When the pandemic broke out in 2020 inside China, Zhao suggested on Twitter that it was possible the U.S. military had brought the virus to Wuhan. What's more, one of the most well-known episodes struck in later 2021, when Zhao touted China's fight against COVID-19 while speaking to foreign journalists.
You must have been laughing up your sleeves being able to live in China during the pandemic.
The expression refers to when someone is pleased with their situation but keeps their pride over it to themselves. Some say Zhao's oust as ministry chief signals a softening of Beijing's wolf warrior policy, especially following last month's mass anti-lockdown protests. An Australian-based historian commented, "For people like Zhao, the CCP uses them when they're useful and casts them aside like a worn-out shoe when they're not." Japan and India are conducting their first joint drills together on Monday. That's in the face of an increasingly aggressive Chinese regime. The action comes on the heels of a Chinese drill in the South China Sea on Sunday. Japan's prime minister just returned from trips to the U.S., Italy, the U.K., and Canada. The prime minister is bolstering Japan's defense to protect itself from Beijing's threat. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what's coming up in our second half. How far along is the modern moon race? What do the contest's weapons look like? And is there a way to rein in aggression from certain countries?
And we have very few indications that China truly wants to engage in peaceful activity and to cooperate with other nations peacefully on the moon.
We hear from Rick Fisher, Senior Fellow at the International Assessment and Strategy Center, to find out more on that. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.